think it's worth talking about some of the big oops moments from the last 10 years and some of the major data breaches that there have been and attacks. If we track back to 2015, there was a Experian data breach. They, of course, do credit referencing and a number of other different things, and a compromise of nearly 15 million records. In 2016, we had WikiLeaks and the American Democratic National Committee leak during the election, which indicated political cybercrime, but also a starting point for the introduction of GDPR, or the General Data Protection Regulation, protecting you as an individual and holding businesses to account if they had a breach. 2017, we had Equifax and 150 million customer records made its way onto the dark web. Uber breach with 57 million customer records, including payment details, and of course, major ransomware attack across the world in the form of WannaCry, which hit the NHS in the UK particularly hard using legacy operating systems. In 2018, MyHeritage, which is very similar to Ancestry, had 92 million customer records leaked, and the Marriott hotels had a customer information leak that was undetected for nearly a year before they found out that this happened, and also a British Airways leaks of customer details. 2020, COVID, the world was locked down, and the cyber criminals certainly took advantage. People working from home, maybe having less security than being in the office, remote working on their own devices, and things like phishing attacks definitely were risen during that time. 2021, ransomware and supply chain attacks were again very prominent. We can count the SolarWinds attack as one of the major stories of that time. And a little tidbit on that, the password that they actually used for that system was as simple as SolarWinds123. More on password management later. In 2022, we of course have the Ukraine invasion, attacks on News Corp, Microsoft, British Red Cross. 2023, hits on PlayStation, Activision, ChatGPT, the MoveIt vulnerability on payment and payroll systems, the UK Electoral Commission, and also slightly more frightening than just going for financial details, 23andMe, which is where you can to send your DNA off to see what future health issues you might have or similar, was also breached, and a number of records leaked in the European sector. This year already, we've had the Motherall breaches in January, where 60 million data records were leaked for different websites and services, such as Spotify, Netflix, and PlayStation accounts. I myself have been a victim of this. No, I haven't had a breach, but I've certainly had text messages saying someone's trying to log into your account when I'm nowhere near any of these systems. And AI, a deepfake, was used to steal nearly $25 million from a Hong Kong finance agency, with someone posing as their CFO using both deepfake video and also an AI program to fake their voice and get them to transfer that amount of money over. And we've seen ransomware attacks on the NHS and the education and finance sectors in the first 6 months of this year. The threat landscape continues to evolve and become more complex as time goes on. Emerging threats from both political, cyber criminals, and many other areas, including internally, can be considered. It can lead to lack of customer trust if you're not putting the right controls in place. Cyber insurance has become a massive talking point, and adoption of this has increased nearly 25% over the last 2 years. And threat intelligence is going to continue or build its presence in form of how businesses assess their cyber risk and staying in front of the threats that are out there. AI acceleration, we know how productive this can be, and a little bit more on that shortly. But there are questions around the data governance. What policies are you using to manage the use of AI internally? Compliance, pervasive AI threats and new threats. Rather frighteningly, we are starting to see malware that has been programmed by AI and has it built into the background to start responding to someone trying to counteract an attack or something, or someone trying to gain access. Along with this, we have a lot of cyber complexity with expanding certification and compliance schemes. There is certainly a lack of cybersecurity skills in the market. The average wage for a good cyber analyst these days, if you're looking to build your own security team in-house, you're looking at maybe 50, 60K a year for that individual, plus training costs and getting the right hardware and software in the business to manage that effectively, which leads to a lot more managed service offerings. That will become the key for some businesses in their cybersecurity posture. But there are a lot out there, and it's getting down to the right one for your business and what you're looking to protect yourself against, which becomes important. And a lack of integrations, we are seeing more vendors start to even work with competitors to strengthen their offerings. But again, with so many different tools out there, you ideally you want everything in one place, but we're not quite there yet. So integrations and working together becomes a lot more important for anybody or any of those publishers that are out there providing solutions. IT transformation, even 5 years on from COVID, we're still doing cloud and hybrid deployments and including AI in enabled PCs. But ultimately, what this brings is a lot more new vulnerabilities to the stage, and again, something that needs to be constantly monitored and constantly assessed and monitored to make sure you're staying ahead and keeping all of those gaps closed. If we look at 2024 and beyond and some statistics, the average cost of a data breach was over 4.88 million in 2024 and has become the highest on record. 88% of cybersecurity breaches were caused by a human error, and 68% of breaches involved were a human element this year. The length of time to identify breach has gone up to 194 days. Cybercriminals are spending a lot more time getting in, dwelling, and just seeing what happens day to day in terms of operations and what goes where to find out the most critical point of attack. This has led to something called cyber fatigue, or an apathy to proactively defending against cyber attacks, and affects as many as 42% of companies. And since the Ukraine war, 97% of organizations have seen an increase in cyber threats, whether that be email, phishing, quishing, any number of different ones that we can talk about. And again, the diverse landscape that we've got out there. The three main factors I believe this year that were reported are going to remain unchanged. So ransomware as a service, this might sound a little wild, but it's actually a competitive marketplace. You have these cyber criminal groups that are actually running marketing campaigns and have websites that look like your own company's campaigns. They have videos, they have white papers, they are active on social media platforms like X. It's a business for them, and a big business. Total ransomware revenues in 2020 were around 20 billion. That's up from 11.5 billion the previous year. Some of the well-placed examples that you've probably seen in the news are Locky, Goliath, Shark, Stampedo, Encryptor, but there are so many others. And as quickly as they disappear, and there has been a well-documented case at the moment of people being arrested in Russia, they're so quick to reorganize, and they have newer and better ransomware variants as they grow. And they're very public about it. They don't mind advertising what they've done and who they've attacked. An increase in AI-powered attacks. We can all sit here and admit the security product market has actually been quite quick to hype up generative AI's expected productive benefits, but for me, there's a lack of practical outcomes, and it can foster a bit of disillusionment. The thought of an autonomous security operations center using generative AI, as I said, it's generated a lot of hype, but it couldn't be any further from reality. And some of the changes that we're going to see, it will continue, but security practitioners will sink deeper into that disillusionment, much like developers might do with some of the Copilot for GitHub that's available. And this is only going to get accelerated by challenges around budget, and unrealized AI benefits will reduce the number of security-focused individuals. Again, just topping up that skills gap that we've got. Finally, supply chain. there's a real growing pressure from Western governments around companies producing software bills of materials. It's always been awkward for software component transparency, but it does highlight the role of third-party and open source software in the products that you might use and governments' purchase of that. In fact, there is a government that's setting a compliance regulation now that software suppliers will need to restrict an open source component if they believe it to be a threat based on grounds of national security. And then as a developer, you'll need to remove that component and replace the functionality. Now, I don't want to go as far as saying that might be rewriting a bit of software, but it can certainly extend the amount of time to release or maybe even put something offline if it's something critical. This is a rough estimate, but who knows next year. We're going to keep as close as we can, and we'll always keep you updated with any webinars or anything that we can provide just to keep you up to date on any new threats that are coming out there.